I'm very excited about our guest today because I have a problem, which is I've run out of almond butter. I just saw this in my fridge, and so I'm super excited that Justin Gold is here because that's Justin right there. He is the founder of Justin's Nut Butters. Justin started making nut butters for his roommates back in 2004, and then he started selling them at a farmer's market in Boulder, and since then has expanded to become a national brand and growing very quickly. So welcome to the show, Justin.
Thanks, Guy.
And before we get into it, if you're watching on Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn or YouTube or from the International Space Station, wherever you're watching, please submit your questions for Justin. We will get to them as soon as we can. So first of all, Justin, you are in Boulder right now? That's
Yes,
where you
sir.
are?
Boulder, Colorado.
And I don't even know how to ask this question anymore. I used to always ask, how are you doing? How are you holding up? But man, there are so many crazy things happening in our world that we're a week away from an election. So how you doing?
It's a loaded question, but to be honest with you, because of attitude, I'm always awesome, right? I'm in a great spot. My family's healthy. We live in Colorado. We get to play outside. It snowed like over a foot of snow the other day, which is really exciting. Winter's coming. It contained a lot of fires that were threatening, a lot of our friends. So I'm in a good state of mind, but I know that it takes a lot of, I don't know if it's ballet or gymnastics or just, mental aptitude and attitude to stay focused.
Wow. We could spend the entire half hour just talking about ballet, but I'm just going to say, sounds really interesting. But we have to talk about nut butters and your business. So just, before we sort of go on, for those who are not familiar with what Justin's is, here's an example. This is the classic almond butter. Just give us just kind of describe what your business does, what the company does.
Sure. So, God, where do I start? So I'm a vegetarian, and 17 years ago, I started making peanut butter and almond butter in my kitchen with a food processor, mainly because back then, I sound like a fossil, but back then there were two types of peanut butter, right? It was smooth and crunchy, and that was really it. There were a few brands of almond butter. None of them tasted really good. When you ate a handful of almonds, it tasted amazing. So curiosity led me down a path of experimenting. And then with a food processor, I was making all these concoctions, putting them in jars, literally putting them in the fridge and in the cupboards. My roommates started eating them all. I started writing Justin's on the jars, right, to kind of protect it. And at that point, someone said, hey, this is a really great product. You ever thought about turning it into a business? I didn't know anything about business, but I did know how to do was use a library. So I used CU's business school's library. I didn't go to college. Colorado University.
Yeah.
In Boulder. I didn't go to school here, but I felt confident using their library. And I wrote a business plan, and I got a lot of help from local mentors and advisors and people in the community. Launched at the farmer's market. And when I launched, it was just with the jars. And I got them into a few local stores, and I was really struggling. And what got us kind of noticed, I guess you could say, was getting outside the jar and getting into a squeeze pack. And the squeeze pack was really our single point of differentiation. And it allowed consumers not only to travel with protein, portable plant-based protein, but also have its trial size to try something new like an almond butter. Because almond butter was, over $10 a jar. And that's a big rate for someone to try something new. But for a squeeze pack, it alleviated that pain, brought them into the franchise. And then then we also do chocolates. And it's not because it was a really smart, deliberate business decision. It's because I love peanut butter cups, and no one was making an organic one. Well, there's a peanut allergy, so those people probably avoid them.
That's true.
Those
are the things I pick out of my kids' Halloween bags, the peanut butter cups. Now, because I live in Berkeley, we do get Justin's peanut butter cups occasionally in their Halloween bags. But just going back on the squeeze packs,
Sure.
For those who don't know what they are, I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. Little sort of squeezy packs of peanut butter, kind of like those energy packs. I use those when I run. They're great. They've saved me at so many conferences, an amazing product. And so that was really the differentiator. It wasn't the jars of peanut, because the jars look, they're super cool. They've got that nice logo and they look different. But that wasn't what got the attention. It was those little squeeze packs.
It was. I thought the jars would be enough because we had a honey and we had a cinnamon and a maple and just the flavor differentiation, but it still really wasn't enough to stand out on shelf. And what happened was the squeeze pack, not only did it create a whole new subcategory of really products, but it also made this portable protein kind of nut butter a reality. And it all came because I'm a big mountain biker, and I was mountain biking eating an energy gel. And at that time, I wanted protein. I didn't need more sugar or carbohydrates. And they serve a place, but I wanted something a little different. And what was really fun is when we first launched the product, people didn't know what to do with it, right? They were like, well, do I put it on a sandwich with jelly and then eat it together? No, put it on an apple, a banana, eat it right out of the pack. And they're like, oh, really? And so it was a whole education that took place with the innovation, because it was a little out there. And then what happened is when other companies started to create their own squeeze packs, it really validated it as a category. And then it's really taken off. It's been really special. But what it's really done has been a trial vehicle for our jars.
Yeah.
And that's really helped grow the jars. And, during the pandemic, the jar business has been the strongest part of our business, because it is that household plant-based protein that is a staple.
I want to get to that in a moment, but back to sort of the origin story. We, as you know, on How I Built This, we do a lot of stories about food and about products that listeners and that I could imagine making myself. Like, you can imagine, it's not within the realm of impossibility to think that you could take some almonds or peanuts and put them in a Vitamix and make peanut butter and then sell them at a farmer's market. It's something that many of us can imagine doing, and as opposed to like starting a tech company, right?
Don't try it at home. It's very dangerous. You have a food processor, you have a fast moving blade. It's put peanuts going in, one ingredient. You have to wear safety, ear protection.
So, the thing about the thing about this idea is that I imagine you kind of started making it because it was solving a problem you had, which was You couldn't find really great tasting nut butters. And then people tried it, your friends tried it and said, hey, this is awesome. You should try and sell this. It's very similar to a story we told on How I Built This a couple years ago about a brand called Carol's Daughter. Lisa Price made lotions, skin creams for herself. And her friends loved it, and they said, you should sell this at the church flea market. Well, today it's a big brand. It's owned by L'Oreal, and it's sold all over the country. So similar kind of idea, which was that it was solving a problem you had.
Yeah. It's interesting. It wouldn't have worked any other way, Guy. The reality is, because it was a problem that I was passionate about, I gave it 150, 200, 1,000,000% of my time and passion. It's working on nights, working on weekends, working through challenges, surrounding myself with people who can help me achieve what I was looking for. And I think it's that passion that really separates a lot of businesses that make it and businesses maybe that don't. And it's the founder really caring. And, and I think that was really important.
I read an interview you gave where you described the first kind of 3 years. I think one of the things you did, and this is really cool for anybody who's starting a business now, really important to pay attention to this story, that in the early days you would go to Whole Foods and you would look at all of the glass jars at Whole Foods to find out what brands were being made in glass jars and where they were manufactured or packed. And you contacted a glass jar co-packer in the area and begged them to have some time on their line. And I guess you got like overnights and weekends, and you basically spent 3 years just packing your own nut butter into glass jars. And that was not sustainable, right? It was not profitable. It was not sustainable. It was just a grind. So how did you keep going? What made you not just give up?
I think it had to do a lot with the encouragement that I got from people who really enjoyed the products. And that encouragement, gives you the energy and the optimism to continue. And also I set a goal, right? I talked to a lot of, look, if there's no one who was making peanut butter, almond butter and could ever make it for me, then I knew I'm destined to be an operator. And that's fine. I would have gone down that path. But I knew that I had to hit certain volumes in order to get to a manufacturing facility where then I could focus on other things, sales, marketing, and growing the brand. And so I had a goal. I knew what numbers I needed to achieve, and I had a plan on what retailers I needed to roll out to achieve those numbers. And it was the optimism that I had from the local community. Boulder's a great community. They support local. They support natural and organic. They support the entrepreneur. And so I had all this kind of local optimism to continue to go. And I also realized that, I'm not really a skilled operator. My passion and skill is outside of the manufacturing. And so I really couldn't wait to get out. And I worked really hard knowing that there was a light at the end of the tunnel.
We're taking questions for Justin Gold. So if you've got questions, please submit those on YouTube or Twitter or Facebook, LinkedIn, however you're watching. Justin, let's pivot for a moment to the current moment. In March, when the pandemic, really kind of when it became clear the pandemic was going to be a serious thing, people rushed to the stores to buy toilet paper and energy bars, and I'm assuming nut butters too. I'm assuming that you probably saw a spike in sales. Is that right, by the way?
We did. Not across the board, but across some parts of our business, yes.
Got it. And then what happened? I mean, then were you bracing for a decline in revenue? I know and I should mention that Justin's Nut Butters were purchased by Hormel in 2016. So you've got a parent company, but you're still operate independently and you still work there. Were you guys kind of bracing for a decline in revenue?
Well, first of all, we're all human beings. So the first thing we had to do was make sure that everyone in our organization felt safe, supported, and that they had food, and that everyone knew that, we weren't going to just shut down our business. So I think giving people this sense of security gave them the optimism to continue to do their job because they knew they were taken care of. And we didn't know what to brace for, to be completely honest. We didn't know, but what we did know was we had to continue to stay positive and focused. And the first thing we did was we started to reach out to our retailers to see what they needed, and they told us exactly what they needed, which was more product. And then everything flowed downstream. So then we reached out to our contract manufacturers to make sure that we stayed, in supply, and we actually had to make sure that they were taking care of their people. And they had this, it's like having 4 holidays back to back to back, this unprecedented demand. And so the first thing we had to do was kind of cut back on the SKUs that weren't our top sellers. And that SKU rationalization allowed our, top SKUs to remain on shelf, and maybe our, bottom SKUs, we would catch up whenever there was time. And then our manufacturers went to 7 days a week, and it's monitoring their progress and monitoring stores and allocating to stores based on their demand and needs, and pulling resources away from food service and putting them more towards grocery, all the while staying positive and checking in on people to making sure their health and wellness, with physical and mental, was strong. And it was wild, and it continues to be wild.
And in terms of like things like supply chain, was that disrupted in any way? I mean, you're obviously buying large quantities of peanuts and almonds. And by the way, do you make other kinds of butters? Is it just peanut and almond butters? We
do a chocolate hazelnut butter.
Chocolate hazelnut.
That is phenomenal. And we do some cashew butters, and we're working on some other products as well.
Nice. So cashews come from Thailand and Brazil. Almonds come from California, I'm assuming. Peanuts for also U.S. domestic. Any supply chain issues?
We find something wood to knock on. What's been wild is our supply chain's been robust. We've not had any disruption of supply. The biggest challenge that we've had, honestly, is forecasting. And the forecasting helps both our manufacturing partners so they can give us production line time, and it helps our supply partners from everything from labels to jars, to and to raw materials, but we haven't had any raw material disruption. And I think it's because people want to work. They want things to do. They want to keep, our food stores busy. And so we've been very fortunate in that respect.
And what kind of trends are you noticing or seeing in terms of sales and consumption? I mean, are people sort of back to consuming Justin's nut butters in the same way? Is there, because people aren't making school lunches for kids as much, but people have more time, for example, to exercise, and also to, they're eating at home. So are you noticing any different trends that you hadn't seen before?
Yeah. And it's fascinating because one of my roles is innovation within our organization. So it's trying to guess and to understand the things that I need in my daily life. The trends we're noticing are, people aren't shopping the stores as much right now, right? You're in and you're out. So a lot of the impulse purchases have been flat, if not declining. So some of our chocolate items that were single serve aren't doing nearly as well as the chocolate items that are in multi-bags. Same goes with our jars. Are doing really well because it's something you can take home. Our squeeze packs, aren't doing as well as the jars because it's more of an on-the-go activity. And I feel like people aren't as on the go as they are right now. They're at home and they can take a spoonful of almond butter or peanut butter rather than have a squeeze pack or something. And so we've noticed that a lot of the trends are at home. We've also positioned ourselves well with a lot of retailers by being a part of their online kind of shopping programs. Consumers aren't going into stores as often, and so the brands that have leveraged themselves with the online platforms, the Instacarts and whatnot, are seeing success with that as well. And that was something that caught me by surprise. I assumed people always wanted to go to the store. But now I get it, right? That's part of the future.
Are there ways, are brands, you mentioned Instacart. Are there ways to make sure that Instacart, promotes your brand more, or sort of, if people type in peanut butter into Instacart, that yours comes up first, or is that not possible?
There are ways that you can promote your brands. Every platform's a little different, but the first thing is you have to be set up in those platforms. They don't just, Instacart doesn't have every product in the store, and there's there's setup fees, there's setup time, there's setup challenges just to make sure that you can even be on that platform. And we did a lot of work last year identifying that, direct-to-consumer shopping through our retailers will be the future. We just didn't see it happening this fast. That caught everyone by surprise.
So you had already set up the brand
Yes.
on those platforms.
Yeah.
Justin, put on your entrepreneur's hat for a moment. You started this business in 2004 when you were in college. I think you were studying to be a lawyer. Is that right at the time?
That's right.
Right now, a lot of people are out of work, but there's also some indication that many people are considering starting their own businesses. I think the number of applications for employee identification numbers has increased by 500,000 this year compared to this time last year, and that's the first step in starting a business, as you know. If somebody is looking to start a business right now in this economic and pandemic environment, first of all, do you think that it's a good time to do that? Do you think that despite the challenges, that there are opportunities at this moment?
It depends, right? There's two things that are the most important to me. Number one, is there an unmet consumer need? And number two, are you passionate about it? So if there's a problem that you've identified that you're passionate about fixing, then absolutely, now is a great time to start a business. Hopefully there's enough people that share that pain point that you can turn that into a business. But if you're bored, you're looking for something to do, and you're not sure, what to do, and you're just, that can be tricky. But again, a lot of times, if you don't start somewhere, you'll never end up anywhere. So I never turn entrepreneurs away with a bad idea. I always talk to them and say, look, I don't know if this is a good idea or not, but if you're passionate about it and you think it's meeting an unmet consumer need, then launch it, see what happens. And guess what will probably happen is if it fails, you'll learn from that failure and pivot it to hopefully find your success. And if you are lucky and you get it, right the first time, wow.
Yeah, when you started selling nut butters, you weren't making a whole lot of money, and I don't think you were profitable, but how did you know that it was going to work, that you should continue? Was it just people saying, this is awesome, this is just so good? Was that basically it?
Wow, how do you know? You never know, right? You never know. So I stayed positive, and I think it's the law of attraction. I think that if you think about growth and you think about success, and you'll find the people that'll help encourage it and promote it. So I was always positive. I was always thinking that this was going to work. I just didn't know how or when.
Uh-huh.
And then let's face it, I got a lot of encouragement. People were like, wow, this is really great. This is a great idea. I got a lot of, how come no one's ever done this before? And those really gave me a lot of encouragement to continue. And I also got a few people that, let's be honest, who are peanut butter, right? Why would you go into peanut butter? Imagine, Guy, like, here I am. I wanted to be a lawyer. My parents were, oh, Justin, our son's going to be a lawyer. We're so proud. And then I decided not to go to law school, jump out of the LSATs. I graduated with a degree in environmental policy. I moved to San Francisco Bay Area, and I worked at a restaurant in Point Reyes, Station House Cafe. Worked at that restaurant for a year, moved to Colorado. My parents are now, our son, he's confused. He'll figure it out. And then I come to my mom and dad and I go, Mom, Dad, I figured out what I want to do. Son, you're going back to school. You want to be No, I'm going to make organic peanut butter and almond butter. And my parents were like, oh, what have we done? What have we done? And so I also got some naysayers. And my parents, of course, were fabulous. No, they're not old Jewish people like I'm making them out to be. But it was a lot of people also had a lot of skepticism because it's a huge category with huge companies. And but it needed disrupted. And it had been the same for a long time. And that's where I got lucky.
All right, we're getting questions here from our listeners. And this is from random text from YouTube. This person asks, he or she writes, I sell a brewing cocoa as a coffee alternative at a farmer's market. What advice do you have for someone like me who is selling at a farmer's market but wants to move to regional distribution?
Brewing cocoa. So the first thing you have to do is start locally, right? You have to own your home. And if you own your home and that gives you some success there, then once you own your home, you have permission to move out to the next layer. And the next layer can be specialty gourmet stores. It can be coffee shops. It can be natural food stores. And then you concentrically keep growing, but you have to own your home. And if you can do well in your home market, that will give you the success and the momentum to continue to that next concentric ring. But you got to start local.
So essentially you're saying this person has to, when you say own the home, like the farmer's market, people who come to the farmer's market need to know, oh, you want brewing cocoa? That's where you got to go.
And you got to get it into all the other, coffee shops. You got to get it in the hardware store. You got to get it in grab and go locations, the grocery stores. And what's crazy is if you see one product in one store once, you kind of like forget it. But if you see the same product in 4 or 5 different stores, you're like, all right. Clearly I have to try this product. And so owning your home is getting it everywhere. And then that gives you the success and the momentum to continue growing outward. And then once you own your home, you can kind of understand your consumer, understand where you belong. Maybe coffee shops is your direction. Well, maybe grocery is your direction. Maybe, performance outdoor stores is your direction. And if you own your home, you can kind of, assess what's working and what isn't, and then take that and you can expand it.
And brewing cocoa actually sounds pretty innovative. I gave up coffee for a while, but I'm drinking it right now. But brewing cocoa could be.
I made you drink coffee? I feel terrible.
I know. I listened to NPR before it was cool. That's what my mug says. So, all right. Here's another question. This is from Facebook. Stephanie Leisner. Stephanie asks, now that more competitors are coming up with their own natural organic versions of nut butters, you've seen them, even squeezy packs. How does Justin stay differentiated and the brand of choice?
That's a really tough question. It's one that, I haven't had to think about before. And so right now there's multiple ways. Number one, we have to stay consistent. We have to continue to deliver a high quality product. We can't take any steps backwards because that'll give a consumer a reason to leave. The second thing we have to do is be better, continue to create better products, innovate in the new categories. And I think the most important thing is really have a greater purpose. That buying a jar of almond butter, not only is it good for our bodies because it's a high protein plant-based product, but we're supporting, farmers, we're supporting pollinators, we're supporting hunger relief programs, we're supporting non-GMO, organic, regenerative, all the things that are going to restore balance to our bodies and the earth. And I think purpose is really important.
Got it. All right. Here's a question from Jessica Goldstein. Jessica's curious why the presence of palm oil or anything other than just nuts. Why is that necessary as additions to your products? I'm looking at your ingredients and it's just dry roasted almonds and palm oil. So why?
It's a great question. So palm oil is in a lot of food products. And if it's harvested correctly, it's really a beneficial oil. So this product was created for me. And I love traditional nut butters. I grew up not having to spend 20 minutes stirring the jar and getting oil all over it. I wanted a traditional nut butter experience. And so we use palm oil because it's a non-hydrogenated oil that helps contain those free and loose almond and peanut oils, so you don't have to continue to always stir it. And palm oil is controversial, and so we've done a really good job identifying sustainably grown palm oil so we can make sure that we're giving back to our communities, to our consumers, to the places we buy it, and that's why we use it.
Right, because there are palm oils that are grown organically and sustainably, and I use it for cooking sometimes. But there's of course other parts of the world where forests are clear cut to plant palm oil groves, and that's where a lot of the controversy comes from.
And palm oil is mostly being clear cut for biofuels for developing countries. And palm oil is in a lot of food products. It's in a lot of cosmetics where they don't have ingredient statements. And what's tricky about, it's in cookies, it's in ice cream, it's in chocolates. And what's interesting is with our products, we use a very, very small percent of it. But when there's two ingredients, right, it's very visible. And that's one of, the reason why I use it again is to create that traditional nut butter, peanut butter experience so we can get a healthy alternative to a lot more people who are looking for that same experience.
Justin, for people who are kind of in the same position you were in 2004, right? Let's say they're in school or just out of school or maybe kind of a few years out and trying out different jobs, but not quite sure what they want to do and know that they want to start something, but not quite sure what, right? Like, because I imagine that when you were working at that restaurant in Point Reyes, you weren't thinking, I'm going to do nut butters. Like there was some point where you had a revelation, where you thought, this is the thing I want to do. And then it kind of stuck with you. What's your recommendation for finding an idea, coming up with something to start?
Wow. I don't know. No, I guess, all I can talk to is my personal experience.
Yeah.
And for me, there's two things that I did, right? Number one, when I was up till 3 a.m. writing a business plan, grinding, almonds and peanuts and adding hot pepper and cinnamon and fresh banana and dried banana and chocolate and staying up all night and eating until I had to lie down on my back because I just couldn't fit anymore. When I was up all night doing this stuff and then I'd be like, holy crap, it's 3 a.m. I knew that this was something powerful because it had such a grip on me and it was so exciting. And it didn't feel like work. It still doesn't. And that's the whole goal. So number one, I knew there was something there because it was really fun. And the second thing was I was very optimistically cautious, right? So I worked second jobs. I was waiting tables up until I had 2 employees. And I got a job at REI and I was selling backpacks and skis and sleeping bags when I had five employees. And so I was constantly putting everybody else first to make sure that, we can make payroll, we can keep making the products. I'll get health insurance somewhere else. I'll have a second job. And so I didn't take the total leap until everybody else was being paid fair and living wages, and then I finally was able to pay myself a fair and living wage. So even though I had all this confidence, I put a lot of people first to make sure the business was being served before I was being served.
Makes sense. Before we let you go, Justin, what's something that you kind of want to take away from the last year with you in the future when, let's say, the company goes back to normal and you are on the road again and you're traveling again, or you're back in the office? What's something that you've kind of learned about yourself, or about your leadership style, or about the way you want to work that you want to continue to do after this pandemic hopefully ends?
Wow. So a few things, right? I don't know if we'll ever experience normal, and whatever normal is what we're living today, right? So this is normal. And I think that when the world evolves, I think that this need to travel, and this need to be in person, and this need to be away from our family, I think that will evolve. And I'm not saying that this is going to be the future, but this is a part of the future. And I think that we all need to consider, what does that mean? And how does that impact our lives? And what are the opportunities for food products, for snacking? How does that evolve categories in grocery? How does it evolve the way we interact with each other? And so it gets me really excited to think about that. And the most important thing for me, and we talked about this off the air, was the time I've spent with my family that I wouldn't have otherwise. And that's really precious. And that has me reconsidering, my needs and wants, not only for the organization, but also for my family.
Right. Justin Gold of Justin's Nut Butters. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Guy. That was fun.
Before we go, I just wanted to thank our sponsor, WeTransfer, one more time. WeTransfer is supporting this episode, supporting NPR. WeTransfer and its set of tools for transforming doubts into ideas. Collect is a mobile app that helps you save, organize, and share inspiration. Paper is a digital notebook that captures your thinking. Paste is a presentation tool to make it easier to present your ideas. And WeTransfer is a modern, simple file transfer tool. The next time you doubt something, let WeTransfer's set of tools help move your ideas forward. Learn more at toolstomoveideas.com. I love WeTransfer, actually. I use it all the time. I use it for my kids' show, Wow in the World, all the time. Me and Mindy, if you know Wow in the World, we send WeTransfer back and forth to each other. So thank you, WeTransfer. Okay, a couple quick announcements before we go. Check your podcast feed, please. We just did a 2-part episode on the McBride Sisters Wine Company, McBride Sisters Collection. It is epic. They were separated at birth. They found each other later in life. They started one of the most successful Black-owned wineries in the world. It's a hero's journey. You will laugh and cry. It's incredible. Please check out these 2 episodes. Part 2 dropped on Monday, so yesterday. Also, earlier this month, my book came out, How I Built This. You can find it at any bookstore, online, wherever you get books. So check it out. I think you will enjoy it, especially if you are looking for inspiration to start something, or you are starting something. So, Justin, thank you one more time. Thank you. As you can tell, I'm a fan because there's none left in this jar. Appreciate having you on, and thank you everybody for watching.